Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert with the Ted Show. We're back. Today's Tuesday, I think. All days run together in 2020. But I'm very excited to have my friend Jeff Hayward with Heart of Florida United Way on the show. But we're not just going to talk about United Way and all the amazing things that they do for our communities, but we're also going to talk about the eviction crisis, which is a crisis if you're not keeping up with that. The housing crisis, there's so many different little mini crises going on, and the eviction one is certainly a big one, which United Way, we can talk about how that all comes into play. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thanks, Ted. It's great to be here. It's good to see you.
Very excited to see you. All right, so we love origin story on the show. The viewers love to get to know you, know a little bit about you. So share where you're from, and then maybe a little bit of your journey to United Way.
Sure. Well, I'm almost 4 years here in Central Florida. Born and raised up in Massachusetts, just north of Boston, Massachusetts. We had 5 kids, and we did what
5 children.
Yeah.
God bless you.
5 kids. My dad was a welder at GE. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. Back then, you could do that. And unfortunately, I was 13. My dad passed away and left my mother with 3 kids at home. And we struggled as kids after that. We ended up on welfare and food stamps, and had bill collectors calling. And I realized then that when I got older, I wanted to make sure that families didn't always fall into that situation. So
people don't realize that kids get impacted. You haven't forgotten how that feels.
I will never forget how that feels. I remember standing in the supermarket line with my mom as she paid with food stamps and feeling the embarrassment of her having to do that. And it has an impact, and it stays with you. And I always tell my kids, you got to remember where you come from.
Yes, absolutely.
So I ended up getting in elective office and was a member of the state legislature up in Massachusetts. We ran against an incumbent, ran unopposed my second term, and then ran for Congress. And I lost by 538 votes and got out of politics. And I figured it was time to get out.
How was politics? Was it as crazy as everyone I know says, or was it what you dreamed of?
A little of both. You're able to make an impact, but it's a crazy life. And I don't think people realize what our elected officials or anyone who even dares to put their name on the ballot of what they go through. But I love that,
right? You're putting your whole life out there. You're putting your family's life. You're putting all of that. One of the many reasons why I have not run for political office, although I get engaged in that conversation all the time. I have way too much of a past, as they would say down in the South.
No, you give up a lot of privacy. You give up your weekends. You've got to be available 24 hours a day. And whether you think you have to or not, the voters think you do. So It comes with the territory. But after being in local government and then state government, I got out of that and went into for-profit healthcare. That was another trip into itself. And we went through a lot of mergers in the healthcare field. And the last merger, I was asked I had to lay off a bunch of people, and did. And it was not a great part of the job. But then afterwards, I was given a check by my CEO. And I thought, he's seriously not going to lay me off after what we've just been through. Our last merger was a $1.5 billion merger. And I asked him what the check was, and it was a significant check. And he said, that's your bonus, because we hit our numbers this quarter. And I got a sick feeling in my stomach to think we hit our bonus because we laid people off, not because we did anything great.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that.
I realized then that was not the world for me. And then I ended up at United Way. And I just happened to be talking to a friend who I'd served with, and told her that story about having to lay people off but getting a bonus. And she said, well, United Way is looking for someone to run their Success by 6 program. It was early education and dealing with the legislature. And she said, would you like to get an interview? Because I've been doing as a consultant for a number of years, and they can't find anyone that they really want to hire permanently. I did. A few interviews later, and that's how history goes. I ended up at United Way, and that was back in 1999. So I've been with United Way now about 21 years.
I didn't know it was that long. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think you have to have a heart for it. I think that you have to, nonprofits have a background in that. And so I just feel like the amount of work that goes into what you have to do, people don't realize on that end either. So let's talk about United Way, because I think a lot of us have experienced United Way. We don't know it sometimes. We also, United Way is very, very good about interacting with large employers and getting them to have that whole program of, I remember it being taken out of my check. I agreed, of course, for it to be taken out of my check. But the impact, it's United Way, you don't necessarily hear about that doing the work, but the amount of money that gets dispersed and the programs that you have are just phenomenal. So give us a little education on United Way.
So Ted, how you describe United Way is essentially how it started. I mean, you know, it started back in the late 1800s, about 130 years ago in Denver. It's now around the world. There are 1,800 separate independent offices around the world. There are 1,100 of us in the United States, and each of us are independent and local. So our board here is a local governing board. They call the shots. We raise money locally. We invest it locally into programs and organizations. But essentially years ago, when I first started, United Way was just changing itself. But it was, we raised money through the generosity of people like yourselves who gave money each paycheck, and then we invested into other programs and organizations doing great work. The old saying, you know, I gave at the office is actually an adage of the United Way. Well, I gave at the office because I gave to United Way. And we've changed so much. To your point, a lot of people know of United Way, but I would gather they don't know much. So they don't know that we run, for example, the 211 Information and Referral Center here. Dial 211 from any phone, you can get connected to any social or human service. I'll bet they don't know that we run the Orlando United Assistance Center that's serving the victims' families and survivors of Pulse. I'll bet they don't know that we run Mission United, which is a program that helps returning veterans from deployment who've got a resume that looks like a military resume, but they can't translate it to a civilian job. We have a program that will help them translate their resume and put it in civilian speak so they can begin.
I did not know that.
Established. No, there's, you know, United Way does so many things, and, you know, whether it's working with their kids trying to read, or it's working with scholarship programs, or Women United, helping young women moving up through the ranks to begin to build their social and professional network, or what we've been doing lately on the eviction crisis is what we're going to talk about today. United Way has a big span of work. It's different in every community, which makes it more difficult. So if you're in Boston or Detroit or LA, what that United Way looks like may be different than here in Orlando. And it's actually designed that way. The problems in Detroit and LA are not the problems here in Orlando. And the resources they have in those cities are not what we have here. So it's designed for each local board and local donors to come together, figure out what the challenges are, what resources we have locally, what will work for a solution locally, and then we implement that locally. And I think that's the beauty of United Way.
I agree. I love the fact that there are so many things that United Way funds or helps fund or creates, and it's identifiable by what you name it. So, for example, United Way, that could be a big, broad umbrella, and it is. But you take the program, you name the program what it should be, and then you provide the services. And that's one of the things I've always loved. And back in the day, I don't know if you can anymore, but I used to be able to look through a list of things that were important to me, because as a donor, maybe XYZ wasn't, but ABC was. So in United Way, I had an opportunity to donate to ABC or target my money, tag my money to go there. And I loved that concept.
Yeah, a lot of people, if they come into United Way, they know exactly whether it's a Boys and Girls Club or whatever, if it's a food bank, whatever is their passion. And I think that's, again, the beauty of United Way. Ted, you get to decide what your passion is, give to United Way, and designate or direct your dollars to that passion. Or you can say, you know what, I want you, the United Way, to figure out with local volunteers, where can my money be best put to use? Whether it's the Pulse OUAC to help Pulse survivors, or whether it's a food bank, or whether it's a youth program, or whether it's a 211 call center or veterans. Let us do that wherever the biggest need is. And that's the flexibility of United Way that I think makes it so wonderful.
I love it. I want to know, though, the eviction crisis isn't something you would normally associate with a large philanthropic organization. So, but it is out there, guys. If you have not experienced it, you have to know. You must have read, all of you, about the housing crisis and some of the things that we have going on, but the eviction crisis is upon us. So tell me a little bit about how United Way engages that and is trying to figure out how to hit it head on.
So United Way focuses essentially in 3 to 4 areas. So we worry about the health of people, their education, whether it be preschool right up through K to 12 and beyond, or their financial stability, and of course their basic needs. And the eviction crisis touches particularly on the financial stability of people and their basic needs. Certainly, I can't worry about you thriving if you don't have a roof over your head.
Yeah.
So a roof over your head is a basic need. And because of what COVID-19 has done to us, your financial stability may be threatened if you've lost your job or had your hours cut back. In doing so, you now put one of your basic needs, that is a roof over your head, in jeopardy. And that's where United Way comes in, because of our concern that you can't thrive, children can't do well in school if they don't have food in their bellies, a roof over their head, and the basic needs of what it takes to support a family or an individual. When that gets threatened, that raises our red flags, and we begin to mobilize against it. So when COVID-19 happened, we saw everyone getting laid off and their hours cut back. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that if I'm not going to get paid for a month or 2 months or 3 months, now I can't pay my utility bill, I can't pay my rent, I can't pay for food. My basic needs are now being threatened. And how does that translate into the community? You've got small landlords who they have to pay their bills too. They're not getting paid. They've got tenants who can't pay them. They've got jobs who aren't there anymore. So all of that rolling, that snowball effect, that is near and dear to us when we look at financial stability. So when we started having people call our 211 call center and expressing the need for housing assistance and an increased need for food and utility assistance, again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out when these alarm bells start going off in our call center. You look out, how is this going to play out in the next month, 2 months, 3 months? It was pretty obvious that we were going to be facing an eviction crisis.
Scary, right?
Your livelihood and your basic needs.
So the eviction, and I think landlords get a really bad rap in this whole thing. But we have to remember that the landlord is still paying the mortgage for the most part. And I'm not talking about your local property manager. I'm talking about the person who owns the home. So if you've been furloughed and you can't afford to pay your rent, that's not just a you thing. That becomes a snowball effect, like you mentioned earlier. The landlords then, they're not getting the money in to pay their mortgage, and they may have been furloughed at their regular job. Yep. And so it's this whole giant crisis that's going on. And then, of course, in Orlando or Central Florida, our rental market is through the roof as far as pricing. We're really sensitive to that on the mortgage side, of course, because a lot of times you can come in and you can qualify for a mortgage and pay less than what you're paying in rent. But it doesn't solve the problem of, okay, I got furloughed. Now my landlord's being impacted. Now what do I do? How am I? Because that's your focus, right? Like you said, it's a basic need. If I'm worrying about, I might be on the streets next week or next month. It's very hard to be productive. Look for a job. Help your kids out when they were in school. It's almost impossible to stay focused on anything but that.
Yeah, there's no bad guy in this equation, and I want to make that clear. We're focusing on the eviction crisis because a new study just came out. 1.1 million renters in Florida are now behind in their rent. 1.1 million. So you imagine, even if it's just 10% who end up getting evicted, that's 100,000 families or individuals that will be homeless and out on the street. It's not the landlord's fault. The landlord didn't do anything wrong. The landlord has to pay their bills just like everybody else. And the bank is knocking on their door saying, we need our mortgage payment. But to your point, if I'm not getting rent money coming in, and God forbid you've lost your regular day job, Now, how are you going to pay your mortgage? This is not, and by any means, United Way trying to vilify landlords.
Oh,
This
no, not at all.
economic
You
crisis.
guys are amazing.
Well, this is an economic crisis that's going to affect landlords too, because they've got families and they've got children and they've got basic needs to meet up with, and everyone is getting put in the squeeze because of this pandemic. So our goal is, how do we keep a roof over their heads, but how do we also make sure that landlords are made whole in some way, through CARES Act dollars or some other way? And then at that point, everyone wins, so to speak, but at least the impact, financial impact, is lessened to an extent across the board.
So how do you do that? You do it so well, but right now the need is so overwhelming. I know many people who are worried about where they're going to live in September. They made it somehow to August, and now they're all in a panic. They don't know what's going on. Schools are opening, or are they not opening? There's so much uncertainty out there, especially in Florida. So what is the plan? How does United Way help? And then how can we help United Way help at least alleviate some of the crisis?
So short term, what we did in March, we started what was called the ALICE Recovery Fund. And ALICE is an acronym that stands for a type of family or individual. It's asset limited, income constrained, employed. So these are families who are asset limited. They don't have equity in a home or credit cards or anything like that. They have nothing to sell. They're income constrained because if they don't work, they usually don't get paid. So you can imagine, if you're working in a restaurant, you don't work, nobody's going to get paid in that situation. But the E in ALICE is you're employed. And these are the folks who get up every day and they work hard, but because they're ALICE, they don't have a lot of savings to fall back on. They're always living on the edge. They're above the federal poverty level, but they're not really making enough to begin saving and get ahead. So those are the ALICE families we worry about. We created the ALICE Recovery Fund back in March and through April, and we raised $2 million because of the generosity of people in Central Florida. They gave us $2 million, and our goal was to get $1,200 into families' homes to help them. So you figure you got the stimulus check from the federal government. If we could get you another $1,200, then if you could get unemployment, you can begin to see, while not made whole, you've at least got some money coming into the picture. So that was what we did at first. But then, of course, after we raised $2 million, there were only so many people left working. And now donations began to slow. Now you turn to the CARES Act money, and thankfully Congress passed a lot of money around the CARES Act. And now the question is, how can we use those dollars? So that's certainly not up to us, but it is up to our government leaders. So short term, we had the ALICE Recovery Fund. Longer term, now going in forward, Mayor Jerry Demings announced yesterday at his press conference that he's soon going to be announcing and bringing to the Board of County Commissioners on August 11th an eviction diversion program. And we're hopeful that that passes. But what we did in the process is we kind of rang the alarm, or as an old saying, you may not be old enough to remember, to bell the cat. And we belled the cat.
Yes.
To make sure that everyone knew this was coming. It's coming, and it's going to hurt financially thousands of families. And the eviction numbers in the courts are normally, very high to begin with. Once this eviction moratorium is raised, the numbers are going to skyrocket. But we wanted to bell the cat. We wanted to ring that alarm to make everyone aware. We began engaging with the courts, the judges, began talking to legal aid. We talked to landlords, and we talked to the mayor's office, Mayor Demings. And God bless him. His team stepped up and began cobbling together what looks like will be an eviction diversion program using CARES Act dollars. The details we don't know. He and his team are still putting those together. I think if you watch the Board of County Commissioners meeting on August 11th, when he brings that in, he gets kudos for leadership and answering and understanding the impact it's going to have on his constituents. But God bless him for providing that type of leadership.
I love that you're hitting it head on. We tend to bury our heads overall, and then the problem gets so snowball that you are just constantly putting out fires. If you can get a teeny bit ahead of it, it helps with the whole implementation, which I totally understand. And I think people don't get that. Remember, you've got the eviction, so you've been furloughed, you don't have money to pay rent. Well, guess what? You also have to choose between food and power. food and water. It's the choices that people are having to make right now. I mean, it's mind-blowing, and it's heartbreaking. And so I love the fact that you're hitting it head on, and we're calling it what it is, which is an eviction crisis. It's not just something that's going to go away. This is about to really hit. And so getting ahead of it, which is what you've done, I don't know, it's just so powerful. Big kudos to you guys.
Thank you, Ted. And the numbers are astronomical. If you talk to the clerk of courts, Moore Russell, she will tell you that she averages 1,000 eviction filings a month. Right now, they're trickling, and they're only hundreds because of the moratorium. But what she's saying is, in the past 4 months, she would have received 4,000. The number and the predictions now is once the moratorium is lifted, she could be facing a backlog as many of 6,000 to 8,000 because of the COVID-19 just having that much more compounding impact. 1,000 in a month on any given month in any given year is a lot, but now you've got many, many people out of work. What is that going to do? So here just in Orange County, if all of a sudden the clerk of courts is hit with 6,000 to 7,000 eviction filings, what's that do to the court system? What's that do to the economy and the landscape? And keep in mind, you get evicted, if I can't afford to pay my back rent, then going into a new apartment, I'm going to need first, last, and security. I'm going to need good credit because they will run an application, a credit check on me. And if I've been evicted, that's a mark against me on my profile. So trying to keep families housed in the first place, preventing the eviction is cheaper and it's better for everyone all around. If we can make landlords whole and we can keep the roof over the heads of the tenants until we can finally dig out of this darn mess we're in with COVID-19, then everyone wins all the way around. But if we have mass evictions, it's going to wreak havoc on vacancy rates and people won't have the cash to get back into new affordable housing.
So you've got lots of love here, which I know Jeff and his team will go back through and respond to all you guys. But I want to know, what can we do? People want to know, what is it that they can do to get involved, to help United Way, to help with the eviction crisis? How can they best utilize their resources with you?
So if you're fortunate enough to still be working, and many of us are blessed, we still have a paycheck coming in. If you are blessed enough to still be working, I would encourage you to go to our website, hfuw.org, and make a contribution to the Alice Recovery Fund. If you want to go elsewhere, we would encourage that too. To your point in the beginning of the show, you said, you were able to designate your dollars. I would ask anyone listening or watching this to look deep in your heart and figure out what your passion is. If it's early education, if it's food, if it's tutoring, whatever it is, figure out what your passion is. Go find an organization that's doing that and give what you can. Volunteering remains difficult because of the distancing, but find an issue that makes you passionate and drives your inside fire. On top of that, be kind to one another. And that's not just a cliche, but think about some of your neighbors who might be out of work. When you go food shopping, pick up an extra bag of groceries. Think of the elder down the street who does not feel safe now going into the supermarket and doing their own shopping. Considering knocking on their door and keeping your distance back and asking them, can I run to the drugstore for you? Can I run to the supermarket for you? That might cost you just $20 or $30 worth of groceries, but think about keeping that elder safe. Think about keeping that family, putting some food on the table. Ted, we're finding more and more families in this situation. They have never, ever had to ask for help before. This is the first time in their lives they've had to ask for help, and they're embarrassed. Yep. So rather than saying, what can I do for you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, just go pick up some extra set of groceries and leave them on their doorstep. They don't have to know it was you, but boy, I promise you, it'll feel good in here, and intellectually, it's the smart thing to do.
It is literally such an easy thing, but I think people just need to take the initiative. I love what you said earlier, though. There is a stigma, unfortunately, attached to asking for help of any kind in our world. When you're talking about when you've gotten to the point where there's a desperation involved and you're choosing to be desperate rather than asking for help, I just want to encourage you to ask. There are people that want to help. And a lot of times, like I do a lot of check-ins with people, either via phone or text or message, whatever. I think it's so important, like you mentioned earlier, if you know you have a neighbor who's elderly, who could really benefit from $20 or $30 worth of groceries, just go do it. Just go out and do it, because it's going to make a huge difference. When I reach out to some people, I know that they've been furloughed, and yet they are still of the mindset that they can't let anybody know that they are at their wit's end. I mean, if you've been furloughed and you're not getting anything, and then I think the extra 600 just ran out. It's just a whole new world that we're facing, and this is actually, August is going to be an interesting tell-all for that. But please go out, just what Jeff said, get involved, go to hfuw.org, help your neighbors, be kind. I know you're right, it sounds cliche, but it's so critical, Jeff. Just that little bit of kindness goes so far right now, especially.
Yep, I agree.
All right, so you're amazing. Heart of Florida United Way is amazing. Look, guys, if you are part of the eviction crisis right now, or feel like you could be, or you're facing any challenges in that arena, you still should reach out. There's the 211 number, hfuw.org. You're not alone. And so the great thing about what United Way does is they're going to figure out, or maybe they don't have the resource, but they have access to the resource, or they know it. And that's also half the problem, or a lot of the problem, is that people just don't know where to go. Right. There's not an easy phone number to go to. We don't have this general source. We all are trying, right? I think especially during COVID, we're trying to figure out how to make it more accessible and easy to follow and easy to figure out where you want to go. But just go to hfuw.org or dial 211, and they will point you in the right direction. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you so much for all you do for our community. Big shout out to Michelle for helping us set this up. I appreciate everything you guys do, Jeff.
Thanks for the show. Thanks for your show and all you do in the community. It's not just the show. We all know that. But also thanks for allowing me to tell the story and have that call to action to our community. This is a great community, a generous community. We've answered the call before, and I'm positive we'll answer it again.
Thank you so much. HFUW, Heart of Florida United Way. Guys, get involved. Reach out to me. Reach out to Jeff. Thanks so much for all you do, Jeff. We'll see you guys later.